Hey guys, in this episode, we're gonna catch up on the updates that have been going on with our environment. And particularly, we're gonna see some context as to why our landscape looks so amazing at the moment. I'm very happy with the landscape. So, where we're gonna start is looking at the latest updates from our Discord server in the environment blockout channel. If you haven't seen the first video on the environment, we recorded in episode 18 the environment blockout by Unreal Habitat, who's supporting our project for all things related to environment. I'm super excited with all of the work that he's been doing. So in the first video, we covered up to the content that he posted in this channel on January 15th. So I'm gonna cover everything in this episode that's happened afterward to the best of my ability, because his specialty is in environment and materials and landscapes and everything like that. And I know just enough to try and take a deeper dive and share in a video format. So where he left off, or where we left off, was the January 15th. So I'm going to continue on what happens next. So from January 20th, we started making a landscape material to use the amazing textures we have for this environment. So the textures feed into the material, and the textures are applied to 3D assets. Sorry about that. I had to pause for a moment. I think where I left off was that the textures feed into the material, which I'll open and show in a moment. And then that is what gives the, I guess, texture to the 3D assets, like these boulders. So the subject of this episode is landscape materials, but we'll also cover a little bit on regular materials for 3D assets. So he's sharing that he's very happy with the results so far. So you can see we went from this blockout to adding some character with the textures that we have. So when I go to our project, this is what we're looking at and sharing screenshots of. It looks a little bit different because the lighting has also been updated. But you can see this is, when I click on this, you see the outline of everything that's selected, and that is in our world outliner, the landscape. And the landscape, in order to create one, if we were to open a new level, is to click on this drop down and click on landscape. I'll go ahead and open that in just a moment, but let me continue on with what he's sharing here. So he's very happy with how it's looking so far. I agree, and then we start breaking down the landscape. So, and you know what? Let me go ahead and start even a step back, because we haven't covered materials at all yet. So what is a material in Unreal Engine? A material in Unreal Engine is an asset applied to meshes to define the surface's visual appearance and interaction with the light, controlling properties like color, metallic, roughness, and opacity. Created in a node-based editor, the material, these shaders combine textures and mathematical expressions to render realistic, complex surfaces on objects. So we've done a lot in blueprints thus far, and materials are a different node-based editor. I think specialists that focus on materials, I guess probably the most professional would be, the job title would be a technical artist, because you can see just in this screenshot, it gets very granular and detailed. There's lots of mathematic equations and expressions and nodes. It's an entirely different world, just like our blueprints, but technical artists can know how to change from block out to looking something spectacular. So that I just described what the material is. So here, let's continue. The landscape material consists of two textures of base color, normal, and a packed texture called ORM that contains the ambient occlusion information stored in its red channel, roughness information, stored in the green channel and metallic information stored in the blue channel, saving disk space and texture size for the final packaged game. So there's a bit to break down here. So base color is, as the name implies, it's just the color. Normal and a pack texture called ORM. So next is normal. In my experience, normal means kind of a general sense of what you see in real life as a texture, like how rough. I mean, no, there's roughness here. Normal map gives it kind of like a 3D appearance. From what I understand, it gives it depth. That's what a normal map is, and I may be wrong there. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but that's like a generalist type of summary. And then we have ambient occlusion stored in the red channel, roughness in the green channel, and metallic. Metallic is the shininess. Roughness is kind of like how much weather the material has, like how you can make things look worn out with the roughness. And then ambient occlusion, I'm sorry, I forget what that is, but I think it's another kind of variant of 3D appearance. But you know what? Let's look it up. What is ambient occlusion in Unreal Engine? Simulates soft, diffuse shadows. Oh, okay, in corners, cracks, and contact points. Okay, cool. So it's a little, kind of correct, but not really. It gives it the 3D type of appearance, but it focuses on corners and small edges, so really fine tuning. So this kind of textures can be made using like a Substance Painter and Substance Designer. That's what we're talking about. Let me open up in our folder. We have a folder by itself with naming structure m_landscape. So when we open this, we see the screenshot that we were looking at. So what we've done is we have 4 color textures, and then what makes this a landscape is through this landscape layer blend. And you know what, in order to create this material, I forgot, if you right click into the content browser, we can click on material, and then we select it, and then we'll be in this node editor. And then what's happening over here is we're using the multiply to change the parameter of a parameter named rocky ground tiling. So everything here is for the coloring of rocky ground. And then we've got a texture coordinate here. So that goes for the color that we talked about just a moment ago. And then the normal maps. Similar setup. We've got our landscape layer blend for each of these feeding into the landscape layer blend with the multiplier node and the parameter. The parameter lets us in a material instance change settings in a way that, like Unreal Habitat said, it saves disk space. So we're going to have this actual single landscape material applied to lots of different areas of the landscape and be using these nodes to be blending things together. And then here's where we talked about last, the ambient occlusion and the metallic and roughness, and I think I already said ambient occlusion. So similar setup all throughout here. We've got screenshots. If anyone needs to see any more screenshots, let me know. And from here, the landscape, we have the landscape material instance. So all of the kind of parent settings is occurring here. And then what we're going to create now is this material instance. And this is editable in the viewport or landscape settings. So from here, we've got the default settings at 0.05 set in the landscape. So the default value is 0.05. And then what we do from there to edit it to get the results that we want, we update in the material instance. Is there anything left in here that I am missing or haven't covered? Again, this is not my specialty. I'm trying to summarize as best as I can for non-technical artists. There's tons of videos that take much deeper dives into it, but I think in like 5 minutes I did my best to summarize. So back to here. So in the landscape now, but before we go further, let's see where we are now. So for this landscape material, we are blending the base color, normal, and ORM using a landscape layer blend node. Okay, we kind of talked about that. as well as adjusting the texture tiling by using a texture coordinate node, and by creating a scalar parameter and multiplying by that default value of 05, we can adjust the tiling of each material separately. In this case, we are blending two materials, the rocky ground and the dirt ground, but we can also add extra materials like mossy ground, for example. So then once the landscape material master is made, we can create an instance. So I was getting a little ahead of myself. This is what we were talking about, and apply it to the landscape mesh, which allow us to access the scalar parameter we exposed very easily. So I kind of skipped over these texture coordinates. So from what I understand now, this updates the tiling. So we're updating the tiling with this parameter. That's cool. That makes sense. So the tiling, what that means is that way, for instance, if I just take this sample size right here, I can't really tell just by looking where the material kind of starts and ends. So there's very little repetition to the eye. So like if I see these two things, like those are two close dots, do I really see those anywhere else in this view? Not really. How about if I zoom out? What I do see is repetition, like, okay, so there's a dot 1, 2, 3, and then way over here as well, 1, 2, 3. But when you're playing, they're so far spread out, it's not very noticeable. But when you know what you're kind of looking for any type of repetition, you can kind of spot it. But in this case, like what we're playing with now, in my opinion, it's unnoticeable as you're playing. We're not looking at the ground saying like, oh, look at those two rocks placed in the same spot. That's ridiculous. So yeah, that's looking great so far. Where did we leave off? Then I left a comment. Then after that, we started adding foliage and modifying the color of the textures and materials to start matching things together, as well as modifying the lighting and the fog. And also added a grass and rocky moss layer to the landscape. So in here, we can see we're adding some moss around the edges of the rocks. So we've got the landscape material, different types of blendings going on. You can see it changes a bit. And then we have the rocky moss. And you can change the scale X to randomize the size of the foliage, and Z offset to make the foliage spawn lower in the ground to avoid floating foliage. So we're talking a bit more in the landscape and foliage mode now. So let me first enter the landscape by clicking the selection drop down. And from here, if we go into manage, paint, this is where we see our layers that we were looking at in the material. So we've got rocky ground, dirt ground, mossy rock, and grass. So here is where you can get your paintbrush. We can start smoothing and flattening and painting the different types of materials here. So this landscape material is configured in the landscape thing here, and then you can see we've got our landscape material instance set as a landscape material. So you can tell that Unreal Habitat has been putting in a lot of work setting up the material nodes, taking time to paint all of these different cool effects going on. Things change as we can go further into the level. We see the rocky moss kind of is connected here onto the rocks, and it starts trickling into the ground. I think it looks super cool. Let's see. Where else do we leave off? Oh, and then we start talking foliage. So that was summary of where the landscape is, and the landscape material. And then as far as the foliage goes, there's also that drop down here, and then you can select which assets you want. And you can change the paintbrush again as well. What he was saying is that you can do a couple of neat tricks that he did. You can select a particular, foliage asset. And then you can go down here and change the Z size and the Z offset and the scale X. Let's see, where is that going to be at? Where's the scale? Where did he say? You can change the scale X options to randomize the size of the foliage. Okay, so we're in here. So here's the Z offset and then the scale X. I'm just kind of skimming through this as quick as I can. There's a Z offset. Oh, and here's the scale X right above it. So back in the editor, if you scroll on down to kind of like the foliage details panel of the one that you've got selected, scale X, you can change this settings so that every particular asset that's painted, there's a nice variation to it. So nothing, so that all of these little grass assets have some life to it. They're not all looking very repetitive. Where did we leave off? So we did the scale X. And then we're going to go further a little bit. So we started adding moss to the props inside the master material with a lerp node and a switch node, which allows to activate or deactivate the moss effect on each prop. So I think this is where he started putting together the master material environment. So here, there's a lot going on here. I can't summarize this very quickly, but we are here, and the work that he's showcasing is the moss work that he did. I kind of showed that a moment ago, but basically we can see the very cool assets flowing together nicely. Like, it doesn't all of a sudden get mossy on the rock, but that there's slowly leading into it. One other example, I don't think we've done that quite yet, but a common example is in water areas. A common example would be like the dirt starts getting a darker color right here and down into here to have the effect of like moisture and dirt. So he's doing that over here in this rock area. Looks really cool. It's a nice fine detail. Where we he says making the props blend together. This is a good screenshot of exactly what he's talking about. Then he also added wind by using the world position offset, as well as having a switch node to make only the foliage move, simulating a wind effect. And for the green spheres, he made a new material using the additive blend node to make it look translucent, as well as the same position offset modes. So we've got, let's do one thing at a time. We have the world position offset, which is I think still in the master environment material. Is it here? Is it here? Here's the wind. World position offset. Okay, so in the environment material, we have world position offset, and this is how he's using this cool trick to enable wind. I've never worked on anything like this before, so I thought that was awesome. And let me showcase the results of what that looked like. Let's go to this one. There's a few placed throughout the level. Oh, first I have to exit foliage. Let's go into here. So you can see it's got this really cool subtle effect of the wind along with the grass assets. So if we play here, oops, I think I'm like halfway off the level or something. Let's just click play in general. Is there any around here? But yeah. So if we run up to here, we can see this really cool subtle effect of these bubbles that have life. It looks like the bubble is bouncing up and down. It's really related to the wind. Super cool. Let's see. And then the green spheres, he's using this additive blend mode to make it look translucent. So I don't think I'll open it right now, but he's got a vertex color node. That's what he's using for input data. And these aren't parameters, but they're, I don't know what they are, just multipliers maybe? Oh, here is a parameter. So he's multiplying the wind by certain values. Okay, the wind intensity, it's a fixed value. These other things are fixed values. And he's adjusting the texture samples, which just look like RGB colors, fixing it to the base color. This is all really cool. The screenshots are even helpful to study it. I even have to look at this more. I like this a lot. Showcasing it with some photos here. They look really cool. If you can see, actually I'll just go ahead and minimize. You can see the concept art. We've got these bubbles here. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And then he went above and beyond and created even further assets. These are the assets that are used with these trees. I think these trees really stepped up the level. And then he added a localized volume fog to get fog on the bottom of the canyon. So let's take a look at these trees first. I know where this episode title is called Landscape Material, but I think we're pretty much done with landscape material. So we're still talking materials and environment updates in any case. But wow, how cool does this look? These look so cool. So we've got the trees, and then he was saying, let's look in the outliner for fog. The local fog volume. So what he did is in this drop down, you can select it's a type of fog, local volume fog. So you can do this, make updates as needed with colors to get this really cool fog down here. Let's click play over here. I love this shot. Come over here and we have like a super cool shot. Let's see the fog. I think we're almost done for updates for now. So in addition to the fog, so he's playing with the lighting, with the fog updates, getting some nice content shots, showcasing what he's been working on. Like, to me, this looks so cool. And then the latest update as of pretty much yesterday, we are extending the level and coming on to building the cave from our concept art. This is really cool. This is a really good high resolution shot. So the cave is going to be the destination of the current level we're working on. So our vertical slice will be this level that we're looking at now. This looks so cool. Show this a little bit. Alright, thanks guys. That's going to be it for this update. Thank you especially to Unreal Habitat. Let us know if you have any questions in the Discord server. Thanks, bye.